Doesn't the Bible support slavery?
Slavery has become a hot-button issue in today's culture. Oftentimes critics of the Bible come to a Christian and they bring up the issue of slavery and attempt to discredit the Bible. But here's the crux of the issue. When the Bible talks about slavery in the Mosaic Law in the time of Moses, leading up to the time of Christ and that sort of thing, was that slavery the same as harsh slavery? The answer is a resounding no. The fact is, it was completely different. And I want to read you a passage here in Exodus chapter 21, verse 16. He who kidnaps a man, whether he sells him or is found in his possession, shall surely be put to death. Now that's a pretty serious judgment on someone who's a slave trader who goes out and kidnaps people and takes them into the slave trade to be sold as a slave. Now, why would Moses bring up something like this? Well, what it is, Moses is trying to distinguish between harsh slavery and the slavery that was going to undergo at the time of the Israelites. In essence, it was the first type of bankruptcy law. Now, see, back in ancient times, if a person had lost themselves to debt and become incompetent with their finances, really what happened is someone would say, I want to get paid, and they said, oh, we don't have the money. Well, fine, they'd throw you in jail till you paid it. Well, you didn't make anything when you were in jail, so by and large, you were just in jail for the rest of your life. The government didn't step in and pay your debt and that sort of thing. Bankruptcy is actually more of a modern invention. But what the Israelites did different, and this is what Moses wrote, was that if a person had lost themselves to debt, they could go to the person they were indebted to, or they could go to another wealthy person and say, I want to sell myself into slavery. This was a voluntary option. If that person said, okay, they would cover their debt, they would give them a place to live, they would train them in a particular vocation, whether it be carpentry or bricklaying, that sort of thing. They would also make a wage. Now, it wasn't equivalent to our modern-day minimum wage, but it was some sort of a wage. And so they could accumulate that. And you know what? After 6 years, they were set free on the 7th year. So really what it was taking somebody who had been incompetent with their finances, training them, getting them back so that when they go back out into society, that they would do a pretty good job. Now, I'll tell you what, this was really a wonderful law, and what it did is instead of the government coming in trying to help somebody out, it let other people help other people out. So it's really like servitude or a bondservant, which is the way a lot of Bible translations translate this instead of slaves. Now, there's a lot of regulations towards slave masters and slaves themselves throughout Scripture. You might think of Leviticus 25, which talks extensively about it, and there's other passages throughout the Bible in the Old and the New Testament. And the reason that these laws are in place is to keep this type of slavery from becoming the harsh slavery. And if Israel didn't have any rules and regulations, really what it would have done was open the door for harsh slavery, for harsh slavers to come in to their nation. But the sheer fact that they had rules against it, first off, shows that it was sinful man in a sin-cursed world, because such things shouldn't have existed in a perfect world. But we're not in a perfect world. And by having those regulations, it prevented these other cultures from kind of taking over the slave trade in that particular area. In fact, it discouraged harsh slavery as well as harsh slave traders to come into that particular area. Now I want to sum this up with a few bullet points, just to kind of give you a few reminders. First off, slavery in the Bible is not the same as harsh slavery that other people often think of, which occurred here in the Americas or in Europe, which are both terrible stains to each of these particular nations, the United Kingdom or the United States of America. Now, another bullet point on this is that it was a voluntary option. If somebody had lost themselves to debt, it was basically like a type of bankruptcy law. They would enter into that voluntarily. After the 6th year, they were allowed to go free. And here's another really strong bullet point that many people may miss, is that Christians themselves, even in today's day and age, were the ones who led the fight to abolish slavery, say in the Americas or say throughout Europe. You might think of great Christians like Abraham Lincoln or William Wilberforce, who fought to abolish harsh slavery. And that was the right thing to do, because morally, harsh slavery is wrong. Just as a last call, Christians, we should be leading the way on every moral issue. And so I want to encourage you to do that.